I'm Dane Rose, and in this exploration, I want to explore the intersection of shame with exclusion and need. So when we are included and we need, we all start in a place of infancy, in a place of childhood and adolescent, where we need others for survival, security, for love and belonging, and for a sense of self-esteem. The child's self-esteem comes from whether or not the parent respects them, likes them, admires them. The child's sense of love and belonging comes directly from the parent's willingness and ability to meet the child's needs. The child's sense of security comes again from the competence of the parents to protect them from trauma. And the entire survival of the heart, mind, and body comes from the ability and willingness of the parents to keep the infant alive, to feed it, to protect it from the elements. Now, when we are independent, meaning we have high levels of self-esteem, we have high levels of self-love and welcoming of ourself, and some reflections of that outside. When we are very secure in our needs, in our survival, when we are surviving. In this state, when we are excluded, when we are cast out of the circle, we may feel puzzled, we may feel a little bit hurt. There may be a little bit of a sting that we would like to belong, we would like to be included in that circle, but we don't feel shame. Shame is the byproduct, right, of need, of an inability to meet that need, and exclusion. So it requires three elements. If we are excluded and we need, and we can meet our own need, there's no shame. There may be curiosity, there may be an assessment that this isn't the right group for us, or these people are unkind. Well, there's lots of places that aren't the right place for us, and there's lots of people being unkind at various points, and so, that's just part of life. But if we're in a place of need and dependency at the time of exclusion, then there is shame. Because what shame is in terms of this social shame, is it's telling us that we are diverging from the straight line, from the pack, from the cult. And that we need the cult, that we need the culture, that we need the group. We're diverging from it, and we need it. And so the answer, the response of the child, of the adolescent, of the lover who is in a regressed state, of the spouse who is in a dependent state, the answer is, what do I have to do? What do I have to say? What do I have to be so that I'm welcome back into the circle? Like, what do I have to do in order to be welcome? This is the state of prostitution. Every infant, every child learns the language of their parents, learns the diet of their parents, learns the mannerisms, the protocols of their parents. and as such belongs for a certain amount of time to a certain extent, right? It's very difficult and very, very shaming when a parent hates their own dependency and thus hates the dependency of an infant, right? Because that's the one thing the infant cannot give the parent, right? If the demand of the parent is that you stop being needy and dependent at a stage of development that is, defined by need and dependency, you have a very, very deep level of shame that cannot be resolved, right? Because it's pre-verbal, and the entire message is that who you are is undesirable, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So that gets very deep into a shame of being. So there are different ways to heal this form of shame. One form is to become a better prostitute, right? I need you, right? We all have needs. I can't meet my needs independently, but I can become better at meeting your needs so that you will meet my needs. And so I can become a better prostitute, right? I won't get caught lying. I'll stop lying. I will do what is necessary out of fear of the pain, of the shame that comes from having unmet needs and being cast out from a circle, from a group, from a community, from a culture that could meet my needs. I'll become better, right? And in the, you can look at that, for example, in the extreme forms of prostitution, you turn on your own and become an agent of the other, right? And there's usually a bargain that can be struck. Usually a bargain that can be struck where if you'll let me be part of the circle, I will do this, 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 and this, and this. And so this is the contract of shame. And, in the abuses of power called criminal justice, one might ask one criminal to turn on the other criminals in order to not be imprisoned, right? And so that's saying, you do our work for us, like you don't like us, you like your friends or your colleagues or whatever, but if you will turn against them, right, then we'll let you be part of us again. We won't lock you up and partition you, right? So that's an extreme example of prostitution, but another one be if you'll stop being the black sheep of the family and instead become an example, right? We'll let you come back into the family system. Or, if I only want to date a vegetarian. Well, I'm not going to keep providing for you, right? You want to stay in a dependent state and all that. Well, I'm only going to give that to a vegetarian. Okay, I'll stop eating meat, right? If you'll pay all the bills, if you'll have sex with me, if you'll do this and this, I'll become a vegetarian, right? So at the dependency level in this dynamic, the effort is to conform and to please. And if you conform well enough and please well enough a group, a protocol, then usually they'll let you back into the system. Now the other approach, and by the way, sometimes this is an infant level response. It's necessary for any infant to respond in that way, for any psychological infant. When you have trauma and dissociation and you're terrified at a young psychological age, then until that is addressed, you are a child, you are an infant in a dependent state, regardless of your biological age. But even if you are mature, even if you are independent, you might look at a group and say they're healthier than me, they're more creative than me, they're more interesting than I am, they're more talented than I am, and they don't want me part of their group because I'm boring, lazy, deceitful, incompetent, and I'd really like to be part of their group, right? But this isn't a territory of shame, right? But if I conform, if I do my chores, if I brainstorm every day and start becoming creative, if I start learning new skills, they'd like me to be part of the group, and I'd like to be part of that group, right? And so that's a good goal, right? In other words, it's every group, every person has a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And that pattern produces a probability field, a possibility field, a probability field, an actuality field. That is, of a higher or lower resonance relative to other possibility fields, right? If you get the best physicians together operating on you, you have a higher probability of a good outcome. If you get the worst physicians all working on you, you have a very high probability of death, right? And so you want to be a part of groups, of circles that have very good outcomes, right? It's the same with a country, right? In every country, there's a certain amount of people per million that die at childbirth. There's a certain amount of people that are percentage per million that are traumatized in this and that way. There's a certain number of people who become addicts, right? And if you can move from one cult, one culture, one country to another one where the possibility field, the probability field, and the actuality field is much higher, that's a good move, right? And what do I have to do? Well, you have to take a boat here, you have to do this, you have to pay a certain amount of money, you have to go through these protocols, and then you can be part of this group, right? But if you're in an independent state where you can meet your needs outside of the group, this is a state of growth, this is a state of preference. I want to belong to the excellent group, and so I'm willing to become better. What we're talking about is the dependent, and it can be both actually, right? Your rational mind could say, this is a very good marriage, right? My partner is a good person. I would be, they're asking me to do what I say I'm going to do. They're telling me that, if I don't show up and be more interesting and get out of bed, that they're going to leave. The truth is, my life would be a better life if I did those things. And I don't know how to take care of myself. And so there's shame, there's fear of survival and needs. And there's also the fact that this would be a growth choice. It's a fear choice, a shame choice, and a growth choice, right? All wrapped into one. But one of the reasons that it's important to move towards independence is that it's difficult to psychologically identify with the growth choice when you are in fact afraid out of an actual position of independence or of dependence, right? And you are in a dependent state when you don't know how to make your own money, to cook your own food, to speak the language, right? You are dependent on another or others until you reach a certain point where you feel confident that I've got this, right? And that's the point of independence. And then you can decide which groups, that you want to belong to. So the next way of solving this is that, as we reach a certain level of competence and confidence, there are different countries that we can travel to, maybe reside in, right? So I don't really like this rather than conforming into what I would have to do to fit into this circle, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go over to this other circle. And if I don't like that, I'll go over to this other circle, right? So in our paradigm, having a passport, having some travel money, having, the computer to internet, to research on the internet what's places in there. So those are part of it. But there's this community event, there's this community event, there's people that meet every Wednesday to dance, right? Now, if I go there, they won't let you wear socks. You wear socks, they don't let you in, right? So do you either change and say, okay, I like wearing socks, but I'm going to fit in, right? I'm going to take off my socks so I can fit into your group. Or do I say, fuck this, I'm going to a group where they don't care whether I'm wearing socks or not. That's the group for me, right? Now, generally speaking, there aren't enough groups to be perfect, right? So usually, let's say there's 3 dance groups in the area. And this one, they let you wear, this one is really nice smiling people, but they don't let you wear socks. This one, they scowl at you, but they let you do whatever you want. And this one over here is traditional this, and they don't let you move the way you want. Socks are irrelevant, but you have to do this dance and this dance and this dance. And so then you have to say, well, which one do I want to prostitute myself? Right? I want to smile. I do want to wear socks. I want to do what I want to do. So I'm going to take off my socks and go to this group. That's the best compromise. Now, if we're in a place of desperation and dependency, all of this is a traumatic event. They're not letting me be me, right? But I need them, right? This is a very loud shout that, this feels terrible. If we have independence and are larger, psychologically, physically, financially, and we have a large possibility field, well, then we can pick up and say, well, there's going to be something like this everywhere. I don't like the teacher at this group. That group is in the morning. I could fly around the world and they have the perfect group there, but, well, they don't have the perfect job there, so I'm going to start with the perfect job, which isn't really the perfect job, but, and I'm just going to piece it together the best I can and respect that every group has protocols. Every group has certain default settings, and everyone has to agree to those or they don't let you in. Some it's you have to learn English, some it's this, some it's that, etc. So the second approach in response to shame is to move to a healthier group. Be adopted, try and find better friends, divorce, try and get a spouse that, tells you you're a nice human being rather than tells you you're a piece of shit every day, right? And then try and meet your needs that you still have. You're still externalizing your need for survival, security, love, and belonging with someone else, but it's someone else who is a nicer person, right? And so how do you transition out of one dependent dynamic to another? So that's both of those responses to shame. The next response to shame is to become more competent, right? And so this is the direction of maturing, which is independent of, you don't have to move, you don't have to be in a relationship, you don't have to leave the relationship, etc., but you're focusing on becoming more competent at meeting your own needs for survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem. So, you're switching from people telling you you're a good boy, you're a good girl, for whatever reason that you're doing the things they think are good, and you start developing your own values and living by those, and you tell yourself, I did well today, right? I don't believe in the cult of materialism and all that. I got up, I made a video in an area, but I and many others are psychologically illiterate. That's what people should be doing. That's taking me closer to my ideal of a psychologically literate world. And so, good job. Doesn't matter if anyone else thinks it is, but I think that's a good thing to do, right? And so that's earning self-esteem, right? Through reflecting one's own values from an independent place, because I'm telling myself that that's a great thing, right? And if I believe that, right, which will partly depend on if I've met my needs before, right? The reason Maslow refers to the hierarchy of human needs is, for example, if you're in an unquestioning place of survival, it's hard to develop your own values and say, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, this is what I think. Because what if they don't help me go to the hospital and I'm dead because they don't agree with my approach, right? So it requires a certain investment in survival, in security of survival, to reach a point where I'm willing to love and value myself independently of what other people think. In other words, if I think I'm going to die and I think I need other people to help me live, and they only love people who aren't gay, but I kind of like the part of me that's gay, well, then I may say, no, I'm not. I don't like this gay part. It could kill me, right? So I'm going to disown my own gay part, because in order to survive and feel secure in survival in a state where I lack the competence to do that alone, I need these people who hate gayness, right? And so I'm going to, if anything, I'll apologize for it. I'm so sorry I'm gay, but could you please help me, right? So that's a sense of shame. That's saying, I apologize for who I am, but please help me, right? So the direction of competence, right? We look at our different needs, right? So we look at, one form of competence is a skill for which people will pay us a lot of money for, right? So that's a high form of competence. If we learn that skill, you could also say that's a certain form of prostitution as well, right? I'm doing this for money so that I can be independent, right? But if I can work for 1,000 different people, all of who will hire me, and if I can do multiple different skills and get most of the jobs I apply for, well, then maybe that's fine, right? And so, so I become more competent at making money, which in a capitalist cult means that I'm more competent at surviving if I know how to turn that money into things that increase the probability that I will survive. For example, being in warm, safe shelter increases the probability of survival. So if I know how to take that money and secure shelter that's safe and this, then my survival goes up. If I sign a long-term lease or buy the house or whatever, then my security of survival goes up. Or if I get leases 5 or 6 times and I solve the problems that the cult presents, abusive landlords, this and that, thieves, whatever, and I survive it, and I know what I'm going to do better next time, again, I can have a sense of security of survival. Right? So then I can, at a point where I survive, where I'm secure in my survival, then I will be more willing to love myself as I am as opposed to what people want me to be. So this is a very important pivot, right? An infant hates themselves if their parents hate them. An infant doesn't say, my parents are nuts, they're incompetent parents. I'm just going to have to wait this out. They're fools, they're idiots. Poor luck, that I got such rotten parents. I'm just going to wait it out, and as soon as I can get a handle on things, I'll parent myself. I'm a great person, and they're just fucked up, right? And an infant never does that, right? Because if the parent picks up on that attitude, that statement, and you're living in their house doing this, happens often in adolescence, right? They say, get the fuck out of my house, right? You want to parent yourself? Go have at it, right? But if you need me and I'm the best you've got, and I don't need you, I wish I'd worn a condom, then, do what's going to make this work for me or fuck off, right? A sociopathic parent, that's the attitude, right? Right, and if they were such a great parent, you wouldn't be complaining about them as much, right? So the child always says, I'm a bad person, my smile isn't good enough, my presence isn't good enough. It's never the fault of the parent, right? So this is the state of the deep prostitute, where if I don't please you, you who meet my need, I am fundamentally flawed and I'm eternally apologetic and I'm so sorry, and what do I have to do to please you, right? And if the parents respond, get the fuck out of my sight and just go and be ashamed in the next room, then that's what the child does. That's the contract of shame. If the response is to come back, right, and that'll happen at a point when the adolescent, when the young adult is strong enough to have their own money, their own friends, their own people, then they'll say, what a fucked up parent. That had nothing to do with me. And that's the process of breaking the shame contract and giving it back. But every child, every infant writes a contract with their dependents, and their, and the bigger ones, the parents write the contract. You laugh at my jokes or you're not getting any dessert. Damn you, I'm going to buy my own dessert. Okay, where's your money? Oh, I don't have it. Okay. All right, laugh at the jokes, laugh at the jokes. So that's the contract of shame, right? You do this, and this, and I will call you one of my own. I will pay your basic medical expenses, bitching and moaning. I will do this and this. I will meet your needs if you do this, and this. And if you don't, and secretly I wish you died, or I wish I didn't have to do this crappy stuff, but everyone's going to complain if I don't take care of you, so I'm going to do this, and this. But it's a contract, and it's a negotiated dynamic. Partly it's negotiated in the community, right? They're a good parent. They look, their sneakers are new, they've got some school book, they take them to school. The fact that they humiliate them every night, well, we haven't gotten that far as a culture. So, we're psychologically illiterate, we're shame-based, we're sociopathic in many ways. Well, that's tolerable, right? But they're good. That's a good parent. Look at how they're dressed. They've taught their children some manners, right? And so the culture has a contract with the parent of who is and isn't an acceptable parent. And then the child has a contract with the parent that says who is an acceptable child and who's an acceptable parent. And the child pretty much has to deal with whatever terms are shoved down their throat because they're in a dependent relationship. But the third avenue, the third path of healing shame is not only the psychological maturity of going from the sympathy and internalization of the child to the antipathy and rebellion of the adolescent to the synthesis and independence of the adult. Right? The synthesis and independence. Right? So synthesis, synergy, you combine elements of the child, elements of what you reject, you form something new in a new pattern of energy, a new pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that you identify with. That is the birth of something new. Now, when nobody likes that, when that cannot survive, when there's lack of confidence, when there's volatility there, there's still a sense of shame. There's still a sense of, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a bit different. You know, I'm not just like you, Dad. I'm not just like you. I'm sorry. I apologize. You know, I'll go do my own thing, you know, Friday nights, but, you know, I'll kind of keep it out of your face, right? Because I'm sorry for who I am. Now, as we meet our needs, which requires competence, as we get confident through experience in meeting our needs, and as we create abundance, then we move into self-love, self-esteem. We move into acceptance. And that's a state of high competence and transcending the set, transcending the family, transcending perhaps the cult, or perhaps being in a different segment of the cult. Perhaps you switch political party and now you're part of this cult, right? And all the other ones are, you know, you throw them out, right? But ultimately, the most useful thing on the planet is a competent, unique, and independent pattern, because that increases the possibility field more than any other form of pattern, right? If everyone is exactly the same, it's very much like a monocrop. You know, in the Irish potato famine, everyone planted potatoes and they all planted the same kinds of potatoes. So when a blight came through, it knocked them all out. And this is why life rewards diversity so much. Right? Because if you have 1,000 crops, and some like it dry, and some like it wet, and some like it cold, and some like it hot, and some like this, you always win, right? There's always one of them that's happy. You have 1,000 crops, right? Then there's always some situation that some of the crops do very well, right? And so diversity in a species increases the odds of survival and thriving for some part at any given point. And in the cycle of life, right, you have times when you need to get a lot of work done very well or the species dies. Well, then the efficient ones survive. And there's other times when everything's going well and the luxuriant ones survive. The efficient ones die off early because 10 years younger, you know, they have a shorter lifespan. We've been worrying their whole life, and so they die 10 years younger. And, you know, the luxurious sensualists in that particular generation live to a ripe old age, right? But things are always changing, right? And so life appreciates diversity because it means that some portion of the species will continue no matter what, right? And that's part of the evolutionary model. So if you are shame-based, if you feel ashamed of who you are, and one way of knowing that is if you feel scared of being seen. If someone wants to really know you and you're worried about that, if someone sees you and you're embarrassed of about who you are, right? You think of something as simple as shitting, right? there are all kinds of people that are embarrassed if anyone sees them shitting. Do you wonder, where did this come from? Meaning, if you didn't shit, you couldn't live. Shit is providing fertilizer for the ecology. Right? So one of the ways, and so these little litmus tests can give a sense of just how much shame. Now, if there's no fear and no shame, there's just a sense of, well, you probably don't want to see me or smell this, but if you do, that's fine. Versus, oh my God, someone's looking at me doing something that this body has been designed to do for hundreds of millions of years. Where's the shame? The shame often comes from the fact that if this, get gossiped about and I was cast out, I don't know how to take care of myself psychologically. I feel like I'm a bad person. I haven't grown up. And I can't deal with people gossiping about this, right? Whereas if you have that sense of inner wealth and inner independence, it's like, well, I'm in a weird cult that thinks talking about people taking a shit is a big deal. Hello cult, grow up, right? We all do it, right? This is hilarious, right? And this is a great opportunity to filter out idiots, right? Obviously, there's idiots everywhere, and so it's wonderful, right? So I've been caught taking a shit, right? The very thing that's keeping our bodies alive, right? And now this has become a big deal at dinner, right? And these people are wanting to distance themselves from me because what? They don't take a shit? I mean, you realize how dumb everything is. But then you also realize, okay, this is a great chance. Like, all the dumb people are going to wander off, and then, you're not dumb. You actually get it. Okay, this is useful, right? And so there's no shame in that. There's curiosity. But that's not the case if you're coming from dependence and fear. If you believe the cult, right? Every cult has been telling its members that they're horrible for all kinds of ridiculous things. You pick your nose. Hello, right? There was an itchy thing. Now there's not an itchy thing, I don't want to carry around a special tiny spoon. If you're healthy, you have nothing to worry about, right? And if your immune system is that compromised, it's probably because of shame, right? Anxiety and stress, etc. So, but if you're moderately healthy, there's bacteria all around us all the time. And in our bodies, there's thousands and thousands of viruses that, if things got out of balance, could easily consume the body. But we're maintaining an ecology of those viruses, right? We're balancing them all out. So, what's to be scared of? So, moving to a state of competence as reflected with superabundance is a stage, right? It's you'll see it in, there's a continuum of abundance. Now, as you're down here and you do something different from the cult, you are weird. But if you're really rich and you do the same thing, you're eccentric, right? So, obviously, if you climb the cult hierarchy of wealth, right? Sometimes it's called seashells, other times it's gold, sometimes it's mansions that you have to maintain, right? Whatever the rank system is, if you climb up that rank system, you become eccentric. But the place to aim for, right? If this is the best cult around and they've thrown you out because you're wearing the wrong shoes, right? Then the contract of shame is put the shoes on or change shoes. put the headdress on. Every cult has their weird stuff. If that's the best cult around, join it, right? Learn from it. So become a prostitute in all the various ways. Everyone who's doing stuff simply to get the money is a prostitute. It's not reflecting their values. It's not hate this job, hate this boss. What a ridiculous product we make. You are a prostitute, right? Deal with it, right? Every person, every infant is a prostitute to their parents. I got to do this. I can't scream out that. I can't do, Dad's drinking again. We can't say anything. Why? Because there'll be a big thing, and then I'll be thrown out of the group, right? Mom will get beaten, then she'll be angry at me, and everyone will hate me because I ruined the contract, right? Everyone's supposed to say, we all believe in temperance and this and that, and then we're all supposed to go crazy so that Dad can keep drinking while we pray, this. It's just nuts. Absolute schizo nuts. So that's, okay, so you survived. You join the best cult you can. Be a prostitute. But while you're a prostitute, learn how not to be a prostitute. So that's first learn if there are better groups to join, right? But you got to be surviving to do that. Maybe over here, maybe there, right? So then join the best group you can find. So that's the next step. But then you're still a cult member, right? You got to do this, you got to do that. Well, now you want to become competent enough. You want to learn from each of these experiences. Who makes the most money? Why? Right? You don't want to learn how they inherited it. Find someone else. Okay, fine, I can't inherit it. Okay, who makes the most? Okay, sales, right? Sales, people who sell things. Everyone wants people who sell things. People who sell things make more money than the people who make things, right? The people who make things have to buy all the materials, have a whole wood shop. But the person who just connects this person to that person gets the same amount of money as the person who's been passing down woodwork for 6 generations, has a $100,000 wood shop, owns land. And you just go in and make the same amount as they do just by selling it? You buy it and sell it? And you don't even buy it before you sell it. You sell it and then you buy it? Right? Voila, sales, right? Okay, so are you going to become a good salesperson? Nah, I'm too dumb, right? I belong to a financially illiterate cult where we all do dumb things and then we wait for the government to rescue us. Well, that's why you want to try and join an intelligent cult, right? An intelligent circle, and find a circle that knows a little bit. And don't disdain yourself for being a prostitute, right? Nobody would be alive without that stage of development. No one. Every infant, every child, right? And until we reach a certain threshold, and there are still vast portions of the human species that until they die are prostitutes. Well, your father doesn't like it when I do this, and so I don't do it. And that's what, right? I know what the rules are. I do what I need to do to survive as a prostitute, right? As long as I do this and don't do that, to do this and do this, I get to live peacefully in this nice place and get taken care of and all that, right? And so that's fine with me. I'm fine to be a prostitute for life, right? So honor that those people are doing decent roles, right? But it becomes a problem if it's from a place of shame, right? Either the shame of being a prostitute and prostitute just all that means is you're doing what you're doing so that other people will let you live, give you money so that you can live, but it's not really what you want to be doing, right? So most of us are prostitutes. most of the time in most of our relationships, particularly in a capitalist framework, because people spend more time doing stuff for money, and most people, I think it's like 60, 70%, don't really like their jobs. They wouldn't be doing that thing except for the money, right? That's a prostitute, right? When you'd be doing it for free, when you'd pay to do it, you're not a prostitute. But to get to that point, most of us who didn't wake up, at 5 years old with the great aspiration of flipping burgers or driving an Uber, right? Most of us, right, actually had something interesting, some interesting fantasy to pursue, but we're not doing it because we don't have enough money, right? So, you can still enjoy being a prostitute. Why not, right? For what we traditionally think of as prostitutes, sex is not a bad thing, right? Particularly if you can pick your clients and whatever. I mean, there are much worse things. Like you take greasy bolts out of a bucket, and that's your prostitution. I have sex. That's my prostitution. Have orgasms several times a day. Make people happy. And you wonder, how did the cult manage to pull that one off? To actually shame people for having a good time and tell people that's the kind of people we need, Look at them, pulling bolts out of a greasy bucket and putting that on. We could all be hardworking like Uncle Harry. Well, that's prostitute thinking. Well, couldn't you think your own thought? I mean, it seems to me if I had to choose between having orgasms and getting greasy hands all day in a dingy factory, I think I'd go for the orgasms. Right. Out, right. Throw them in prison, right? That's what cults do. So you have to try and pick cults that, aren't going to kill you for being intelligent, right? And intelligent always means iterating better than what is or what was, right? If you look at the world and say, do careful analysis for 20 years and say, the world is perfect the way it is, right? Vandalism, theft, this, that, corruption, it's just wonderful, right? That's not intelligent, right? The more intelligent you are, the more you see the gap between what is and what could be, right? And if you're really intelligent, you actually manage to do something, right? You don't just fume about it, right? That's a low level of high intelligence. If you're really intelligent, medium level, you start doing things about it. And if you do a tremendous amount of it, right? You look at someone like Elon Musk, dreaming, what does the world really need? And how can I play a role in that? Well, I have to get really good at sales, at coding, at engineering, at this. I have to become really competent. I have to read a lot of books. Then I have to work really hard, right? Then I have to take bets and think big and have to be a bit lucky, right? And then I need to attract other people to my network, right? And so in that process, right, Elon got a lot of shame. All the automakers, a lot of the investors, Tesla was the biggest shorted stock for a long time. There were more billions bet against Tesla to crash and fail, right? That's called shame, isn't it? You're working 100 hours a week to try and make the world a better place, and everyone's ganging up and waiting to see when you fail, and you might, right? If you don't have a lot of inner competence, it's like, fine, I'll fold up and you'll all be happy, right? That it goes back to the status quo, right? So, it's important to understand that groups feel threatened by competence that could change them. It's called disruption, right? You think the Russians are happy That Elon has a cheaper, better rocket system for taking people to the space station? No, right? Because now they've got to get better, or their network, their cult, becomes more obsolete, more irrelevant, right? So there's a competition from all these circles, right? And so you can negotiate the best deal, usually, if you're independent. If you're a beggar and you come up to a Buddhist church, a Catholic church, and a whatever church, a Muslim church, if you're a beggar, there will be a better deal, like one of them will have better bread or whatever, and you say, please help me, and they say, okay, just study our cult, You're a beggar at the, So, depending on where you go, they're all vying for members of their cult, right? But you're going to get a better deal, right? If you're independent, if you have a lot of money and might actually donate money to the church, and you talk with different priests and negotiate kind of what would be the story, what would be the narrative here, right? You want lots of my money, but am I going to be told that the meek and the poor are going to inherit the earth? Or are you going to say that wealthy people are the foundation of our community? Well, I'm not going to give you $1 million, So how about you over here, right? You can go around and find who's going to give you the best deal. And it's the same in any other thing, right? I'm a multi-talented, famous people. Anywhere I come, lots of people want to come. I make good things happen. Oh, we want you in this group. We want you in this group and so that's really the key. And that's ultimately your job if you want to transcend the prostitution stage. And if you want to be a part of great networks doing the things you really believe in and want to do, is you've got to get really good at things. You've got to get good at first the things that other people want, so they'll pay you enough money to give you financial independence, whatever. And then you've got to get good at the things that you actually believe in, right? So growing up amongst psychologically illiterate people, this is what I believe in. It doesn't make a penny. In fact, it costs at least $100,000 a year, in time off work, etc., to do these videos. But this is actually what I think is, in a really intelligent world that understands the real costs of psychological illiteracy, I think people doing something about that is intelligent, right? I want to live in a psychologically literate world, right? So I get to do this because I've run a landscape business for 30 years that can operate with 2 hours a day of my time, right? So I get to do this, right? So so the landscaping is prostitution. It's not what I would be doing right now if I could do anything. But it makes a lot of money. And this is what I would be doing. I'm doing it for free, right? So the movement from prostitution it's psychological, but it's also practical, right? So good luck working with shame.